Thank you for having me here. So I've tried to make this presentation as non-InMobi as possible. Uh, so as you know, InMobi is the world's largest independent ad network. We have close to 25 offices, essentially a mobile-first company set up 5 years back. Strong focus on technology, whether it is rich media or native or big data, targeting, and so on. And as mentioned, we have close to 800 million users on our network. We work with almost all the largest publishers uh, and advertisers, and we also support programmatic and some of these other new trends. So my topic is about what we call as Apponomics, and anybody who has probably looked at economics, usually the study of economics is all about study of trade-offs. So what do you trade off versus what is the decisions that you have to make in economics? Like, do you increase the interest rate or not? What do you do about Forex? So we've just applied the same concept to the app ecosystem. And we believe that there are three main discussion items. Like, I've spent 2 years in InMobi, and most of the times the questions are around this. Is advertising really worthwhile? How much money will I make? How much scale will I get on your network? At what CPD? I want to enter China. Do you have something different to suggest versus Japan? And I think these are the questions which we come across all the time, and we've tried to see how to kind of answer it through some case studies and through some metrics. So I think, as you all know, trade-offs are a part of life. I won't talk about the third point. I'm quite bad at it, but in the sense, this is always a choice between risk versus return. And when you think about the gaming market, the risk of doing advertising, for instance, is the loss of user experience, right? So all the time you're balancing risk versus return, and that's been the challenge, right? So if you look at it, when I started off in InMobi 2 years back, there was always a lot of developers who hated ads. They just don't want to do it, right? But over a period of time, as rich media technology, as more advertisers, as people realize it as a part and parcel of everyday life, and it's a $7 billion industry, we've also seen that consumers also start to remember some of the ads, and it has a big influence on some of their user purchases. And we have seen that across surveys that we have done over the last 5 to 6 quarters, that the receptivity to mobile advertising is increasing, and it's almost valued more than TV and desktop today, right? And that's an encouraging sign from a user standpoint, right? So the users are actually quite more receptive than even developers were one or 2 years back. And this is a good indication of that. There are more users who are receptive to advertising than in-app purchases today. And this is across diverse markets, US, Korea, China, right? So we are on a very strong ground when it comes to advertising, say, compared to 2 years back. So that's one. The other thing which has happened in the ad industry is the emergence of new formats. When we started, it was all about banners, and I think the Amazon presentation talked about how ugly it looked. It really looks ugly, and I'm the first one to admit it, though we are in the business of selling banners, right? But over a period of time, we have had interstitials, which kind of embeds with the in-game experience. We moved it to native interstitials. So native interstitials take the look and feel of the app. So if you're Candy Crush, you will have pastel-colored frames. If you're Half Brick, you will have something closer to the fruits that you have, and so on and so forth. So we have seen that compared to just interstitial and native, there's a 15 to 30% increase in the CTR itself. And then as you go into native, which has been one of our big focus for this year, close to 50 partners who have signed up with us, we are really seeing that the big question about managing monetization on one side versus user experience, that has really changed. So people can keep the user experience intact. They can keep it within the app without compromising on that, and they can actually enhance the engagement. So engagement plus user experience plus monetization is what native delivers. And we are delivering it at scale and without having to create custom ad units, which means that it is a fully SDK supported self-serve platform. So from all angles, we think native is scalable. It is, non-user experience intrusive, and at the same time, because of the engagement that it provides, it also delivers good monetization. Um, so, and I think we don't think of native as an ad format because there are people doing icon ads, there are people who are doing different kinds of that, but we really think this is kind of embedded into your own app experience. So if you have shop fronts, if you have leaderboards, the ad here is closer to your leaderboard. This is an ad which is along with some of your storefronts, which a lot of game developers have started doing, so on and so forth. So wherever you think that the user is pausing and he wants a respite from there, we can show an ad and which is completely native. It takes the look and feel of how you do it, completely, right? So that's on. This is also where more and more games are trying to brand themselves, and we see this as an experience, a branded experience, where at the time of sign out, it's almost like a pedestal of sorts, where you can show a great native ad, and some of them are also being used for house ads of some of the game developers, and we think that this is so close to the user experience, right? It's almost like your brand, which is your ninja or your whatever your icon is, it is welcoming somebody else's brand proposition, and we think that the tightness here is just awesome. And we have seen that earlier game developers used to talk to us probably at the end of the development lifecycle. We are actually seeing game developers talking even before launching their game to see how they can incorporate some of these experiences, and more and more of that. And we can do it across the type of apps. So messenger apps like Tango, TextMe, so on and so forth. News apps, we have news apps which have gone live like NDTV in India. We have you name a type of property, and we can put a native ad on it in a scalable SDK manner, right? So it's a chat engine, it can be a lot of things, right? So these are just examples to show the power of native. But what I really want to talk about was that how do you really decide when to do advertising versus an app? And this is probably a slide which looks a bit remote, but you really see that the likes of Supercell and King are really at the far end of the spectrum. They have high users and high ARPDAU. But there are a lot of games in this bucket, which is ARPDAU of less than 5 cents and not that many users, or maybe closer to that on the other axis. And really, when you have such low ARPDAU and the cost of user acquisition, retention is so huge, it really you really have to think about, is in-app the only sustainable strategy, or do you have to add, another 30-40% of your revenue starting to come from advertising itself? And this is, I think, somewhat like a tipping point, right? The ARPDAU of less than 0.05, which really has to, your thought process has to start triggering. So if you're not that big, and if your revenue per user is not that great, we really think that sorry, this more animation than I thought. But so wherever you are, you need to start thinking about what you can do with advertising, right? And basically, we feel that today, with the ad unit CPMs that we see in many markets, which are about $3 on this axis. So I'm talking about ad unit CPM, which means that whatever real estate it occupies, the full real estate, what is the CPM? And on the other axis, your sessions per DAU. I think even the Amazon presentation talked about how important the sessions are. So if your sessions per DAU is more than 2, and the session time is quite significant, at least above 5 minutes, you are better off doing advertising. Because at that stage, at this tipping point, the revenues that you make from advertising is actually more than in-app. And I think this is what we have observed from working with a lot of players. And we have seen that even there are people on our network who earn through advertising more than $50,000 a day. And it's a very significant source of revenue. And especially in markets which are constrained, sometimes I think there's a lot of bidding which happens on the marketplace. So, and what actually determines the number of sessions is basically the app category. There are certain categories that we really like. For example, endless runner games are a great category for advertising. And you will find that some of the top endless runner games like iMangi, Subway Surfers tend to make a lot of money from advertising. Social and utilities, because there is more open rates in those kind of apps. Some of the arcade properties where people kind of play it to test their scores really have more sessions, and they are the best beneficiaries of advertising today, right? And once you add native, I think we can add more categories to it because they also get the same benefit of more sessions, and you can actually show ad units which are not user intrusive there. So that's on what is the trade-off, right? I think if you can get above 4 and above, if your session time is healthy, you can actually make a lot more money from advertising than in-app, in conclusion. The other thing which I wanted to talk about was that, how do you do it rightly? And we have some experiences from, working with different players. I think the first one is quite important. And usually I get the phone call from a developer almost at the last 2 days before he's submitting an app for the App Store. Hey, can I add your SDK? Can I just do it right now? Will it take 4 hours? Will it take 2 days? It's probably at the last minute that you add an ad SDK. And to me, that is actually probably the worst point. You do a very, not the best job that you can do, right? And somewhere game developers and app developers have to start thinking of, the ad unit is also a product. The same time that you develop your gameplay and so on and so forth, you should look at the ad unit as an equal citizen in your, programming mix. And sometimes it takes the lowest precedence. And we really want to change that. We want to make you and ourselves think of it as a branded experience. Think of it like 6 months down the line, how would you want your real estate to look like, and how do you mesh it with your user experience? So that's one. The second is, let's stop thinking about ad requests, right? To me, a lot of ad requests are meaningless. Like if your ad request is somewhere, if the banner is very poorly specced out in a very low ARPU market, really it doesn't add much value. So the more and more we are talking to, is what we feel is that sometimes even the developers don't even know what are their users. Even if we ask a basic question, like, I think the way I look at it is that a developer asks me, can I get brand ads? Like, can I get a Nike ad or a Pepsi ad? So the next question I ask him is, hey, look, these brands want an audience of 18 to 35. Can you tell me anything about your user? And he says, no, I don't capture it. So I think that's a fundamental problem today. Like if you want more eCPMs, if you want more brand ads or audience-based ads, which are there in the market, it's more important to get savvy about segmentation, so more savvy about your own users, right? And I think that's the kind of discussions we would like to have more and more with developers on how to position your users well. And that's why the combination of the right ad unit, understanding the user profile as well as the type of app experience is quite critical going forward. And then you want to make it scalable and repeatable, right? We have seen people adding very small ad units, testing 5 ad networks on the same ad unit. Then it kind of, a lot of ad networks lose interest in that property. If the property is good, we think of it as a property, right? And if it is good, we would invest in it and we make it scalable. And so please do think about scalable options, work with the larger partners, and you get the benefit of it more and more. I think I'll talk about some of the bad examples we have seen. So there are people who have added native on top of the banner, right? So everything, even though it's a native ad, it looks like a banner. And this is not a great implementation. And we have seen that the CTR is quite poor because people can't distinguish between this and that, right? So this is not the best way to do it. And so what we believe is that you separate it out so that it's very clear that this is an ad and this is a native ad, which looks closer to your user experience. So separating out, not showing native and banner on the same real estate is a good takeaway. And there are these ads which look too native. Like there is an implementation that we did where there's an icon which people can hardly see. But it is native, but it's an icon ad, but hardly visible. So though we can be very creative about what native units we can create, but essentially unless the people see it and click on it, you will not make money. So it has to be in a way that people understand it or can distinguish an ad from a normal one. Some of the app walls you can't distinguish, or sometimes it's just, too intrusive, right? And these are not the right ways to do native. So, in this case, it is hidden. It's very hidden, and we can't do much about it. Here, it can't be distinguished from the content. So unless it is distinguishable, yeah, it is part of the content stream. It is an in-app ad, but unless you can distinguish, people will not click on it, right? And then again, you will not make it. And here, it's very intrusive. So these are not the right ways to do native. And these are the right ways, right? Where we are actually extending this real estate. It is in line with the app experience. Again, here we are kind of putting a small red bar to show that it's an ad. And here we are not actually, we are kind of making it in line with the chatting experience. So all these are good case studies of how to do native, right? And once we do it this way, you can do that, you're getting that optimal balance of monetization versus user experience. And this is another problem. People just tend to reuse the banner slot. Okay, I'll make my banner native. But it doesn't work that way because your banner is at the, from an eye matching standpoint, it's probably at the lowest, when you scroll. And it doesn't work that way, right? So just reusing it doesn't really add value unless you kind of change your look and feel a bit. So sometimes we actually dissuade people who are using banners not to just convert a banner into a native because you're just, it's like saying you're watching, a Blu-ray disc on an old TV, right? Which it doesn't, it doesn't add up. It's not compatible. So I think native in terms of this matching of user experience to monetization is here to stay. We have a lot of testimonials from news apps to music apps to gaming publishers who have used it. Tango is also one of the largest players we have. So very happy with the mix of user experience and monetization that they're getting. So that was about in-app versus advertising. In-app purchase versus advertising. And we think that native is kind of a game changer there to make that decision faster. The other one is this debate which we have, where King and Supercell have kind of changed the market for user acquisition completely. They have gone for high scale, high LTV, and they've worked with probably most of the large ad networks. And we are increasingly seeing that either we get a query about get me high LTV users at a very low scale, or we are getting requests about give me scale. I don't care about the CPD, but just give me the scale to break into the top 10 or top 25, right? And this is actually like a 6-month project, and we want to work with developers and advertisers, and wherever we have worked on a sustained 6 to 12-month basis, the game developers have got the benefit of it. We see too many developers trying to say, let me try to get cheap installs from an incentivized network very quickly, and then figure out retention schemes to maximize that monetization, right? But we see that the market has changed, and it takes a lot more, sustained effort to get there. This is an example of King, where it was a sustained way to get the rank. Of course, the game was very popular, as was mentioned in the previous session. But they did a lot of things about constantly keeping their App Store rank at that level, because that actually created the level of daily active users which maintained their revenues. And we think that if you want anything more than 5 million users globally, you have to use an ad network of some scale. It's very difficult for anything above 5 million to be delivered through other means like incentivized versus and then doing other retention kind of schemes. So I think we being one of the largest ad networks at scale have that benefit. And also some of the publishers who can provide those LTV users are not at that scale. And you will find that their ability to keep on churning those users is getting lower and lower. And the two things that worked well for our advertisers is this. One is the creative optimization that we have done. So we do a lot of, I think somebody mentioned localization, somebody mentioned, how to do it. But we have actually done creatives. We change creatives sometimes by the week, by the day, by the time part, by the market. And that actually leads to higher CTR. So one thing about working with a partner for an extended period of time is the creative optimization benefit. And the second is a lot of specific inventory, which kind of mirrors the user segment that you're chasing. So it could be sporting inventory, it could be utilities where people actually have a higher propensity to consume apps, so on and so forth. And we have kind of mapped the engagement index across the categories that we have to what kind of users that you want. And then if you add a lot of the targeting features like segmentation, retargeting, all these tools which are available today, like which were not available maybe 6 months back, to retarget the same segment, segment level targeting about gamers or reactivation campaigns, so on and so forth. So if you add that technology, you can maximize your app store rank for a longer period, right? And we have these segments from the experience of having 800 million users. I wouldn't touch too much upon this topic because this might need a beer or two to really go into the details, and I'm running out of time. But literally speaking, the point I want to make is that your CJK strategy, which is China, Japan, Korea, has to be really different from what you have followed in the Western parts of the world. The reasons are very obvious: distribution platforms, the scale of user acquisition. I think in Japan is the market where people actually, your largest competitor like Kolopulao will be doing TV advertising and you won't be. So the scale is very different. The risk appetite that you need to acquire users at scale is again quite different. You'll find in China, local gaming developers outspending you for user acquisition. And there is structural complexity. Do you do it on your own? Do you partner? And so on and so forth. How do you change gameplay? So with that, I'll complete my session. And if there are any questions, happy to, take them.
You were talking about the user segmentation and understanding more about your users. How do the apps actually do that right now, and what are the options for them to know more about the users?
So usually, most of the apps have some kind of an analytics platform. So we can, so that is from what data that they already have, or they can use it through analytical tools. We also have the big data analytics where we may not, we know that the user segments of a certain set of publishers are completely anonymized, but we know that these are more attuned towards these kind of apps, or they have downloaded these kind of apps in the past, so on and so forth. So there are some big data analytics tools that we use at our end to segment as well our user base, and then we match that. So it's a combination of the two, because otherwise the way you define a segment and the way we define might be very different. So once that matching is done, then it becomes reusable across brand and gaming advertisers, and also through programmatic. So it gives you that longer term advantage.